Hey YouTube, today I'm starting a new series where I'll be talking about some missing person cases while I play Minecraft. If you don't know me, welcome to the channel and you can call me Mia. The cases I covered in this video I'd say are quite well known. I would like to get into less well known cases, and if you have any suggestions, please leave them below. And consider subscribing. Let's get into the video. So as you guys can see, I did have a little bit of a head start. I did forget to hit record, which sucks. But yeah, I looted one village. I found this one. This is how far I've traveled. Yeah, it's a lot. So the first case I'm going to be covering will be the disappearance of Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank was a 28-year-old from Germany. Him and his friends in 2014 decided that they wanted to go travel to Bulgaria and they would go on a little all-inclusive holiday. While his friends returned home safely, that would be the last time that anyone would ever hear from Lars. Hello, camel. I'm getting distracted by Minecraft. So this trip was the first time Lars would ever leave Germany, and unfortunately he would never return home. Lars lived a pretty regular life. He supported his local football team, and I'm gonna put the name on the screen. He had a long-time girlfriend, and he was close with his family. He also worked at this place, which I can't say, which was Germany's largest naval base and only deep water port. At the end of June 2014, Lars and 4 friends spent a week at the Viva Club Hotel in the Golden Sands Resort, which was about 17 kilometers north of Varna. Golden Sands is often described as the Bulgarian version of Ibiza, known for its beaches, nightlife, and affordable prices. For the first 5 days of the trip, things were pretty uneventful. The group swam, they went clubbing, and they watched the World Cup. Although on July 5th, things would change and Lars got into an altercation with some other German tourists at a bar. He got into an argument and it was about football. They supported this team I'm gonna put on the screen while Lars supported the other one, and I guess they had some disagreements. Later that night, after several hours of drinking, Lars told his friends that he wanted to go back to the hotel and he wasn't hungry. So he left, and later that night his friends went back and Lars was nowhere to be seen. He returned early the next morning and told them he had been attacked while walking back, and Lars was under the impression that the German tourists had paid someone to beat him up. And he also complained that his ear was hurting and that he could barely hear anything. 2 days later he visited a doctor who diagnosed a ruptured eardrum and an injured jaw. The doctor advised him not to fly because the air pressure could worsen his condition, and he also prescribed some antibiotics, advised that he go and get some treatment from a hospital, which Lars declined. One of Lars's friends offered to stay with him until he was fit to fly, but Lars did decline. So the rest of his friends flew home, and Lars was unable to find an accommodation, so he did have to settle for a hotel in a more sketchy and less developed part of Varna, which was called the Hotel Color. Later that night, Lars had called his mother Sandra, and he was asking her to block his credit card because he believed that the hotel had copied his card. And also throughout the night he texted and called multiple times, sounding anxious and paranoid. He told her he was being followed by 4 men and asked about an ingredient in the antibiotics that were prescribed to him. So surveillance from the hotel shows Lars pacing in the lobby. He's looking out of windows and hiding in the elevator. He appeared frightened, but no one suspicious was seen on camera. Around 1 AM, he left the hotel for about an hour before returning, and it's unknown where he went. The next morning, Lars decided to return home, so he had contacted his mother, who had then booked a flight and a bus ticket for Lars, and also sent him 500 euros, which Lars never withdrew. Lars took a taxi to the Varna airport, carrying a backpack and a travel bag. He went to the airport doctor, Dr. Kostov, to confirm that he was fit to fly, and the doctor said Lars appeared nervous and erratic and expressed fears about the antibiotics. After examining him, it was confirmed that he was safe to fly. At that moment, a construction worker had entered the room, and Lars suddenly started to panic, and he reportedly said, "I don't want to die here, I have to get out of here," before running out. CCTV captured Lars leaving his belongings and running out of the terminal, and out of the building. Outside, he climbed a 2-meter high fence, ran into a field of sunflowers near the A2 highway, and this was the last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank. Yeah, so since his disappearance, there have been several theories. Some believe Lars suffered a head injury that caused confusion or paranoia. Others think the antibiotics caused a rare reaction, leading to hallucinations. Although some of his friends did say that Lars did not even take the antibiotics. On the other hand, there is no known history of mental illness in the family, and his friends and relatives said Lars did not use drugs. Despite occasional sightings of Lars in Brazil, none of these are confirmed. Lars's mother, Sandra Mittank, continues to search for her son. She believes his injuries might have caused memory loss and that he could be living homeless. She has hired many private investigators and also appeared on television in Germany and Bulgaria. She also manages a Find Lars Mittank Facebook page where she continues to share updates. Even after all of these years, she still does remain hopeful. She said, "There's a good chance he'll come back and he just needs my help," which is heartbreaking. If you do have any information about the disappearance of Lars Mittank, please contact local authorities or visit the Find Lars Mittank page. So the disappearance of the Sodder children has to be one of the weirdest cases I've ever looked into. It just seems like there's a lot of information there that was overlooked by authorities, maybe because people were paid off. I don't know, but it's very strange. For Jenny Sodder, the worst day of her life began with a strange phone call. It was 12:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, 1945. She answered the phone, and a woman's voice asked for someone she didn't know, followed by some strange laughter. Jenny shrugged it off, hung up, and went back to bed. As she walked upstairs, she noticed something really odd, which was that the kids didn't do their usual chores, which was close the curtains and the lights and lock the doors. She was annoyed, but she didn't think much of it. Not even an hour later, Jenny's woken up again, but this time it was to something hitting the metal roof above her. She later describes the sound as being like a hard ball or a rock hitting the roof and then sliding off. About an hour later, she woke up coughing, thick smoke filled the room, and the Sodder house was on fire. Jenny and her husband George escaped with 4 of their children, but 5, Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were trapped upstairs. George tried everything to reach them. He broke a window and he sliced his arm in the process. The water barrel outside was frozen solid, so he couldn't even scoop any water up. And then the ladder that was usually in the garden was missing. His trucks, which he planned to use to reach the window, would not start. By the time firefighters arrived hours later, the house was already gone and no trace of the children was found. Authorities said that the fire must have been hot enough to cremate the children, which would explain why there was no skeletal remains found or anything. Others did not believe this. There were very strange details about this case that started to arise after the fire. The ladder that was usually in the garden was tossed in a ditch 22 meters away from the house. The phone line outside was cut and it was not burnt. The night before, someone had been stealing equipment from George's garage. Officers had ruled the fire an accident and said it was faulty wiring, but George knew that this wasn't true because someone had actually inspected the wires recently and they were fine. If the fire was electrical and started because of that, then the power should have gone out. But Jenny said before that the lights were still on during the blaze. A couple years later, an Ohio crematorium confirmed something. A fire burning 30 to 40 minutes couldn't fully destroy human bones, meaning the children's remains should have been found. Over the years, people came forward with possible sightings. One woman said she saw 4 kids at a Charleston hotel traveling with 2 men and 2 women who were of Italian descent. Another said she served them breakfast the next morning after the fire. Now, there were some strange things that actually happened before the fire. Months before, actually, a local insurance salesman had actually threatened George after George criticized Mussolini, who was the Prime Minister of Italy at the time. The man told him, quote, "Your house will go up in smoke and your kids will be destroyed." Yeah. And we still think it's an accident. When I started digging into this case, I went down a huge rabbit hole because every single lead is just strange. In 1947, George and Jenny reached out to the FBI. Director J. Edgar Hoover replied that it was a local matter outside of the federal jurisdiction. He said that the FBI could only help if the local police agreed, but the local police and fire departments declined. So the Sodders hired a private investigator, C.C. Tinsley. Tinsley found out that the same insurance salesman who threatened George was actually on the coroner's jury that ruled the fire accidental. Crazy. According to the Times West Virginian, the man had actually previously worked for George and even increased their home insurance policy from $1,500 to $1,750 without the family's knowledge. Not cool. Also, I'm running around a lot because I'm trying to find somewhere to build and I'm not having any luck. I have found a bag which is gonna... Oh, I can't put that in there. It's gonna be very helpful actually. I don't even want to know. So things got way stranger. Tinsley heard a rumor about the fire chief F.J. Morris. He told someone privately that he had just found remains in the ashes, a human organ, and that he'd placed it in a dynamite box and buried it at the scene. The Sodders dug it up, they brought it to a local funeral director who examined it and realized it wasn't an organ at all, and it was a beef liver, completely untouched by the fire. Who does that? A rumour spread that Morris had planted it himself, hoping that if the family found the remains, that they'd finally stop searching. Come on. Surely he'd have known that they would have the organ tested? No? By 1949, the Sodders hired a pathologist from Washington, D.C., Dr. Oscar Hunter, for a full excavation of the fire site. They found a few small items, some coins, a burned dictionary, and several vertebrae. The bones were sent to the Smithsonian. They reported that the vertebrae belonged to one person, likely aged 16 or 17. That's a little older than the oldest missing Sodder child, who was 14 and a half at the time. The bones also showed no signs of fire damage. The Smithsonian concluded that the bones likely came from the dirt that George used to fill in the basement, not from the fire itself. Decades later in 2016, researchers suggested that the gasoline barrels in the family's garage might have made the fire burn hotter, and when George covered the embers with the dirt, he might have accidentally created an oven, which helped advance the cremation process. In 1952, the Sodders put up a massive billboard along Route 16. It showed the photos of their 5 missing children and offered a $5,000 reward. It stayed there until Jenny's death in 1989. They followed every lead across Texas, New York, everywhere, but nothing ever led anywhere. Then in the late 1960s, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny received an envelope that was postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photo of a man in his mid-20s, and on the back was a very strange cryptic note, and I'm gonna put it on the screen for you to see. Jenny and George couldn't deny the resemblance to their Louis. He had the same curly hair, same strong nose, same eyebrow tilt, and they hired another investigator to find the man, but he vanished without a trace. Some people online have tried decoding this message. They think it could either be a zip code from Sicily, and others think it could be a date of birth or just a cruel prank, and no one really knows. Even now, investigators are divided. Some believe the children died in the fire, pointing to the gasoline barrels that could have made the fire burn hotter. Others think that it was something far more sinister. And honestly, taking into consideration all the weird things that were happening before the fire, the strange encounters with the men trying to sell the insurance, and then he literally said, your house will go up in flames and your children will be destroyed. I just feel like everything's leading to it not being an accident. There were just too many strange coincidences. The cut phone line, the missing ladder, the trucks that wouldn't start, the threats, and the delayed firefighters. So when they called the firefighters, they showed up hours later. Some people do say also that, like, because it was so long ago, that the firefighters were not trained back then, but I still feel like showing up hours, like that many hours, is a bit crazy. Just me? Whatever really happened that Christmas night, the mystery of the Sodder Children still remains one of America's most haunting unsolved cases. The last case that I'm going to cover in this video is the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. This case is actually very strange, and I feel like a lot of people have heard about this case. So Brandon Swanson was a friendly and outgoing young man from Marshall, Minnesota. He graduated from Marshall High School in 2007 and completed his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College by spring 2008. He was studying wind energy and hoped to build a career in renewable energy. His parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, said he was independent, responsible, and very well liked. On the evening of May 13th, 2008, Brandon attended an end-of-semester party in Canby, Minnesota. He wasn't known to drink heavily, and his parents believed that he was not intoxicated. After leaving, he got into his car for the 30-minute drive home to Marshall. For unknown reasons, he took back roads instead of highways. Brandon called his parents at 12:30 a.m., saying he had driven into a ditch. He wasn't hurt but needed help. He thought he was near Lind, which was a small town northwest of Marshall. So Brian and Annette drove out to help Brandon, keeping him on the phone to find his exact location. Things did get pretty frustrating when they couldn't find him, so Brandon decided to walk towards what he thought were lights in Lind, and he stayed on the phone with his father as he walked. Suddenly, Brandon shouted, "Oh shit," and the call ended abruptly. His parents called back repeatedly, but he never answered. And that was the last time anyone heard from Brandon again. His parents continued looking for their son until the next morning when they were able to report him missing. Police initially dismissed their claims and said teenage boys go missing all the time. According to Annette, one officer said directly, "As an adult, Brandon has the right to be missing if he wants to be." Unfortunately, it took hours of Annette pleading with the officers before they would take Brandon's disappearance seriously. If you take into account the events that happened, him crashing his car, actively trying to find his parents while on the call with them, and then randomly yelling "oh shit," and then abruptly vanishing from the face of the earth, you would think that the police would maybe take this a little bit more seriously. Like, what do you mean? After the pleading, they did start to investigate, and cell phone records later placed Brandon near Taunton, which was 25 miles away from where he thought he was. His car was found in a ditch near the Lincoln county line with no damage and no sign of Brandon. I have finally found somewhere that I'm okay living at. Took a while. Ground and air searches took place over the next few days for Brandon, and rescue dogs were brought back to track Brandon's scent from his car. The dogs followed his trail across an abandoned farm and then along the Yellow Medicine River at the river's edge. The dogs lost Brandon's scent, which indicated he may have gone in the water. However, the dogs did pick his trail back up on the other side of the river, which would have indicated that he got back out. There was no blood, no torn clothing, no wallet, and nothing had ever been found. There are some theories on what happened to Brandon. Some people believe he may have fallen into the river, but no body was recovered. Some people think it was foul play. Some speculate he might have met someone after the call, but there's no evidence of this ever happening. Some people also theorize that because of Brandon being blind in one eye, he could have fallen into an old uncovered well, as he was going over fences in the dark. And also, being blind in one eye can mess with your depth perception a lot, and I assume it's a lot worse at night. Brandon's disappearance led to Brandon's Law, which was introduced in 2009, which requires police to immediately investigate missing adult cases rather than assuming someone left voluntarily. It sucks that this law had to be introduced for them to actually take missing cases seriously. Brandon's story is a reminder of how quickly someone can vanish and how important the first hours of a missing person's case can be. If you have any information, contact the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension at 877-996-6222. So that concludes the video. Thank you for sticking around if you made it this far. So I know I didn't accomplish much in this video in Minecraft. I was just going through the cases and it's kind of difficult speaking at the same time I'm playing. But I'll get used to it. But yeah, so I feel like we made progress. We found somewhere to live and build a base. So in the next video, that's exactly what we will be doing. What do you think of the makeup? Does it eat?